What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat, back for another week of fights, and this time we've got UFC Vegas 65, Derek Lewis versus Sergey Spivak at heavyweight. UFC 281 last weekend was good to us as a pay-per-view. A lot of action, a lot of violence, two new champions. We made profit. I got 10 out of the 14 fights picked correctly, so I'm happy with that. But one critique was there was no heavyweight fights. So this week, we've got a couple of our fun heavyweight fights we know and love as fight fans, and some good opportunities to make some bets. So I've got a couple of bets in. A lot of the props have dropped just today, so I'll go over all of that. Check out the description below. BetUS Sportsbook I'm partnered with. Use my promo code AddictedToCombat125 for free money to bet with on that site. Some awesome promos there. 125% sportsbook bonus when you use my code AddictedToCombat125. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Let's keep the channel growing. I appreciate all of you that keep tuning in week after week. Let's break into this fight card. First fight of the night at women's flyweight, we've got Teresa Bleda taking on Natalia Silva. Striker versus grappler matchup for two young newcomers to the UFC. Teresa Bleda, at 20 years old from the Czech Republic, represents the grappler in this matchup, looking to get the fight to the mat. She is 6-0 as a pro, 6-0 as an amateur, and coming off of a Dana White Contender Series decision win, where she was a more than minus 500 favorite, and she got the job done. Looked pretty impressive. Now making her debut officially. She is going to be the bigger woman here, but all that said and done, she is still the underdog at plus 145 against Natalia Silva, a Brazilian striker, 25 years old, pretty young, and just made her successful UFC debut against Jasmine Jasudavicius Vicious by a dominant 3-round decision after a 2.5-year-long layoff. So minus 170 favorite is Natalia Silva, the Brazilian here. And I agree with it. I think she looked very impressive, more impressive than Bleda looked as a minus 500 in her bout on the Contender Series. I know it's a tough spot and it's hard to compare, but Natalia Silva, I was not impressed with her pre-fight UFC. Before she was in the UFC, I was not impressed with her pre-UFC tape is what I'm trying to say. She looked like very green in the striking, a little bit awkward, a little bit hittable, and not very powerful. And in fact, she had 5 submission victories all by armbar on her record. It looked like that would have been Silva's best path to victory against Jasudavicius Vicious, but she came back after a 2.5-year-long layoff, and Silva looked night and day, looked so much more refined, powerful. Her kicking game is just so accurate and clean and technical and fast, and she has the cardio to back it up. She's able to counter wrestle Jasmine Jasudavicius Vicious, shut down all the takedowns, get takedowns of her own by some nice counter wrestling hip tosses, working the overhook game, and looking strong in the clinch. The cardio was backed up in round 3 by the same amount of power and fight-ending intent with her strikes, even after all the grappling and strikes she threw so far. So I like Natalia Silva in this spot. I think she's going to dominate the striking over Teresa Bleda, way more than Bleda will dominate the wrestling. But it does scare me off of making a bet on Silva. Both of these girls are still green with things to prove, and if the bigger woman in Teresa Bleda ends up on top position early in a round, Natalia Silva might struggle to get back up to her feet. Now, I will say this. The reason I'm not totally impressed with Bleda off for Dana White Contender Series decision win was that her opponent, Maia, was also trying to go for grappling as well. So instead of getting back up to her feet in the scrambles, Maia would try to get on top position, look for, just dominant positions of her own, and she would get swept and end up on her back again. So in positions like that, I think Natalia Silva would just get back up to her feet and keep on striking up Bleda. So give me Natalia Silva by a 3-round decision here. Probably no bet on this fight. I just want to see how this shakes out between two women who are pretty young and pretty green and possibly improving even more. Up next at bantamweight, we've got the returning Fernie Garcia taking on the returning Brady Hiestand. And we haven't seen Brady Hiestand, 23-year-old wrestling base fighter, since he lost to Ricky Turcios by that split decision for the Ultimate Fighter finale last year. So we haven't seen him since then. Like I said, he is 23 years old. Sometimes it's good to see these guys take time off when they're young, improve. He is only 5-2 as a professional. His 2 losses were to Chad and Hellinger by KO and the Ricky Turcios decision I just mentioned. But Hiestand, wrestling base, very heavy wrestling approach, serviceable striking, but still very green, needs improving both his offense and his defense as far as the striking goes. Now, Fernie Garcia, who's going to be 7 years older at 30 years old, he had a nice round 1 knockout on the Contender Series over Joshua Weems. who we saw very briefly against Christian Rodriguez in a loss recently. But Garcia is a boxing-based fighter. Now, not to say he won't grapple with the takedown attempts and things like that. He does, but I don't think he'll do that in this fight. That would be extremely poor fight IQ. Fernie Garcia is 10-2, and he's the plus 135 underdog here. Hiestand is the minus 155 favorite. So why that is because I think the pretty good wrestling ability, both smothering top pressure, the chain wrestling, and the eagerness to go for the wrestling early and often for Hiestand fits right into the deficiency of Fernie Garcia, who has trouble with the takedown defense time and time again all throughout his career. Even in the LFA, where he went 4-1, Fernie Garcia had all decision results in those, and the one he lost was due to the key round, losing the wrestling exchanges, getting taken down, getting controlled. So there was one spot there where he did have a split decision win in the LFA that was a clear as day victory for Fernie Garcia. It was against a guy named Ryan Hayes. And again, even in that fight in round 3, the only thing that made it close, questionably close to even lose that round, was him getting taken down by a very green, inexperienced guy pretty much at will. So if this stays standing for any extended period of time, I think Garcia could knock him out, especially earlier than later. He could knock out Brady Hiestand, who's been knocked out before. I don't think very highly of the cardio of Hiestand, especially in the striking realm. I don't think very highly about his striking defense or offense, but at 23, he could improve on those things, like his boxing. But what I do like about Hiestand is since he has the kryptonite of Fernie Garcia, he's got the wrestling. He also goes to that early and often, right off the gate. He does not wait until the end of the round to maybe go for it. He dives for hips and legs right off the bat. So I like that. I think he should win the fight. I'd probably line this right where it's lined at like minus 150-ish for Brady Hiestand. Maybe since there's such a deficiency in one aspect of MMA for Garcia, maybe I should, think that there's some value for Hiestand. But something about the guy, I need to have him show me, something in this fight. So I don't think I'm going to get to a bet on Hiestand. Maybe if I look into this deeper and I am wowed by certain aspects of his cardio in fights I haven't watched, maybe I'll go for it. But from what I saw in his fights in The Ultimate Fighter and on the Ultimate Fighter finale, I'll trust in Hiestand to employ his strength, wrestle early and often, and just get the controlled time to get a decision win here. So give me Brady Hiestand. Not very much confidence to bet it yet, but we'll see where the week goes and where the line goes. Moving down to women's strawweight, we've got an interesting and close matchup between Maria Oliveira and Vanessa Demopoulos. Kind of a young versus old, striker versus grappler matchup. Maria Oliveira representing the young striker at 25 years old for the Brazilian. She is 1-1 in the UFC, coming off of a domination at the hands of Tabitha Ricci in her debut, but then also defeating Gloria De Paula by a split decision that I think she deserved to win absolutely in her last bout this year. Now, Vanessa Demopoulos is coming off of a narrowly edged out split decision win over Jinyu Fry, one that I don't think she won, but she made it close enough to make it at least competitive. Before that, she beat Silvana Gomez Juarez in round 1. Armbar from guard after getting dropped by a big right hand. So Vanessa Demopoulos, although she's older, she has less fights overall as a pro. 8-4 record for Demopoulos, 13-5 for Oliveira. Demopoulos, though, has the better, higher profile fights against UFC level competition, right? She was in the LFA, pretty much losing to women that are going to be UFC caliber at the time, but getting some solid experience and being just a tough, durable chick in there. A flat-footed counter striker at times. Basic tools, but kind of respect-earning power on those 1s and 2s, sometimes adding the hook at the end of her strikes. But then she'll look to catch her opponent's returning fire, over-swinging, and she'll get the level change, take him to the mat where she rules, the jiu-jitsu in mixed martial arts. So Oliveira's got to be kind of on her P's and Q's as far as takedown defense goes. Oliveira's not the strongest in the clinch. She does have good Muay Thai skills, a very tall, long striker. Super aggressive, for Oliveira, almost overly aggressive, but nobody's made her pay for it yet. The right striker, the right counter puncher who could just use like a good jab or, like just countering with a nice stiff hook and circling off, could really give Oliveira trouble. I thought that would have been Gloria De Paula in their last fight, but she did not do it. She was a little bit too late, and I believe she got taken down and controlled in round 3, maybe even, took some more damaging strikes. I'm trying to remember how that fight ended up being a split decision, but Maria Oliveira whooped her ass in round 1. I think got the better of her in round 3. Maybe gave up round 2 and won the decision there. But again, Maria Oliveira, super aggressive. She'll rush forward in blitzing combinations, 1s and 2s, just pushing her opponents backwards. Again, she could get caught over swinging and something like that and get taken down by Demopoulos. I am going to take Demopoulos to win this fight just by a slight margin. And the money line reflects that it's close, right? Minus 105, slight underdog price for Demopoulos. Minus 115, slight favorite for Oliveira. I'm sure this line will move in one of the two directions by the end of the week. Tail of the tape advantages go to Maria Oliveira. Her striking certainly goes to her. But the BJJ, the better strength of schedule and experience goes to Demopoulos. Durability, I think the fight-ending ability probably goes to Demopoulos. I think it's more likely Demopoulos takes it to the mat, gets a submission, than it is that Oliveira knocks Demopoulos out. So at 25 years old for Oliveira, if she's made any sort of defensive improvements to her striking game, I think that could be a big difference maker here. Oliveira will often stand completely square to her opponents and just be wide open for counter-striking. Demopoulos can probably stun her with something and take her down and just work control time or a submission. So give me Demopoulos here. Not confident enough to make a bet, but give me Demopoulos. Let me just watch and see how this one unfolds. Up next at bantamweight, we've got a pretty puzzling matchup here between Ricky Turcios and Kevin Natividad. So both guys desperately need to impress here with a win. Kevin Natividad, the underdog at plus 135 for the Hawaiian, who's coming off of 2 back-to-back knockouts and then a year-and-a-half-long layoff he's coming back off of. So makes sense he's the underdog here, but Ricky Turcios at minus 155, the favorite, the Ultimate Fighter champion of last season. The guy had one of the worst performances ever against Aiemann Zahabi, one of the few guys with the pleasure of getting outstruck by Aiemann Zahabi and losing a 3-round decision to Zahabi, who usually gets his work done early. It was pretty universally agreed that Turcios would use the same frantic pace and pressure we know him from, the Ultimate Fighter, on Aiemann Zahabi to win a decision, or he'd get knocked out early. But Turcios landed, I think, 200 total strikes out of like 250 attempted in his fight against Brady Hiestand, who we talked about, and then followed that up the very next fight with landing like 25 strikes total out of 200 attempted. So pretty much 10% of the accuracy he had in his first fight, he had in his second fight. Man, I mean, if he returns even a little bit to the guy he used to be with that pace and pressure and just stops being gun-shy, he's got a good chance of knocking out Kevin Natividad, because Natividad, even though he's only 29 years old and he is Hawaiian, he does not have that Hawaiian durability. Natividad's got a 9-3 record. All 3 of his losses are bad knockouts. So his last 2 losses in the UFC, Demopoulos Gary in round 1, knockout loss. Miles Johns in round 3, out cold, knockout loss. And his only other loss was his first one ever in the LFA some years ago against the guy named Glenn Baker. You watch that fight. Glenn Baker in 9 seconds of round 1. The first left hook the guy lands on Natividad's chin, puts him out cold, sleeps him stiff. So the guy's got a glass chin for sure. I don't think it's a fluke. Like, you can forgive Miles Johns in round 3. You can forgive Demopoulos Gary, but Glenn Baker, long ago in the LFA, who's 4-3, never been seen or heard from again. I don't like that. So Kevin can be a little bit gun-shy, even though Natividad does have some good knockout power. He's got 5 knockouts of his own. If even Kyle Estrada, who's fought a lot of UFC guys in the LFA, knocked out badly. So he does have power. Turcios just can't be gun-shy. Just give us a little bit of the volume we once saw from you, Ricky Turcios, and you'll look way more than a minus 155 favorite. And more than that, I think Turcios, if he has any of that frantic pace and pressure, he's going to have so many opportunities to land on the chin of Natividad, which I think is compromised. So the Turcios KO is at like plus 550 because Turcios not known for being a knockout threat. Only 3 of them out of his 11 wins. But I think it's playable here. I like the unders because both guys, probably could land a knockout punch here. On Natividad, he could finish because he's chinny, but he also has power. He could knock out Turcios. The under 2.5 is at plus 185. So I like fight doesn't go. I like the unders, but I like staying away from this fight and just watching it as a fan. I got to see if Turcios has the ability to bounce back after that embarrassing decision loss. See if that was just a one-off. I don't have much hope for Kevin Natividad either, so I'm going to stay off of this one. I think Ricky Turcios is the side. I just don't know how you play it, to be honest. Like, we've seen 2 performances in the UFC from him, one pretty bad, one pretty good. I'm just going to sit back and watch. Give me Ricky Turcios by knockout or decision. At bantamweight up next, we've got a match between Miles Johns and Vince Morales. A pretty fun fight here. Good movers, good strikers at the weight class. Exciting guys, especially Miles Johns, who is 28 years old. Both guys are 5'7". It'll be Vince Morales, who's 4 years older at 32 and has 4 inches of reach at a 70-inch reach. 11-6 record for Vince Morales. So not the best record. He's 3-3 in decision results. He does have 6 knockouts. Only one of Morales' knockouts are at the UFC level. He is 3-4 in his UFC record so far, whereas Miles Johns is 3-2. And both guys have had a taste of not so good competition, but also a higher level of competition as well. We're looking at Vince Morales coming off of a decision loss to Jonathan Martinez, and Miles Johns coming off of a round 3 submission loss to John Castaneda. So both facing pretty good competition, getting a taste of that and defeat as well. So Miles Johns 4-0 in the LFA, including a 5-round bout, a split decision one over Adrian Yanez. So both guys, Morales and Miles Johns, actually do have, I think, wrestling as their first martial art in high school. I think Miles Johns went a little bit further with that. One of these guys that could have gone to college for wrestling but went to mixed martial arts instead. Miles Johns, super powerful, 6-0 in decisions, 4 knockouts, including a couple in the UFC. Pretty vicious ones as well. That round 3 knockout over Kevin Natividad, somebody we'll talk about, and a round 3 knockout over Anderson Dos Santos. And that's actually how I think this fight is going to go. It's more like the Anderson Dos Santos one, with Vince Morales being the longer, lankier opponent here. I really do think Miles Johns is going to be threatening with takedown attempts as he does, just to open up his hands. Johns has a very nice way of improving upon his reach deficit here with that nice step-in stiff jab. He lunges in with a jab, always catches people off balance, and somehow just gets right into their guard in between their combinations. He sets everything up off of that nice jab, including the big overhand right. I think he hit him with like an uppercut left to the body and then a big overhand right in round 3, knocked out Anderson Dos Santos a few fights ago. I think something like that is going to happen to Vince Morales, who has never been knocked out outside of the TKO stoppage due to leg kicks. And by the way, Miles Johns likes his leg kicks as well. He definitely throws people off balance as they advance and chase him. And Johns has got a good way about using his footwork and striking to never get trapped against the cage, rarely ever get cornered. He's very good at circling off before he gets fully trapped. He sees that black line, that inner perimeter of the octagon, and he knows to start circling out, jabbing and hooking his way out into open space again, where he gets back to work with his elusive striking. So much more... I think Vince Morales, technically on the numbers, is the more active striker by minutes, but Miles Johns is much better defense, much better strike differential that's positive for Johns and negative for Vince Morales. I think Johns is just the tougher guy here with more explosive power. So the 2 times that he's tasted the defeat in his career are the most recent one against Castaneda. Like I mentioned, he got out-wrestled and, I think clubbed and subbed in that bout in round 3. And the other time that Miles Johns lost was that flying knee in round 2 by Mario Batista, who we know is pretty good and very explosive in his own right. Vince Morales gets outstruck, he gets out-pressured, out-countered, and out-wrestled. So I'm seeing Miles Johns at minus 145 as a pretty good bet here. I did put 2.5 units on him at that price tag. I like Johns to get his hand raised in this one. And I also like him to be a kind of a mini Yoel Romero as far as getting round 3 finishes, right? So he does have a couple of subs on his record. He does have 3 round 3 finishes. So I got degenerate. I put a 1/10 of a unit, just a 1/10 of a unit sprinkle on Johns in round 3 at plus 1,400. And I got real degenerate with a 0.1 unit stab on plus 3,500 Johns by round 3 submission. So, just crazy odds, a crazy offshoot lottery ticket on those, but the main money is the 2.5 units on him at minus 145. Give me Miles Johns by a round 3 finish. Up next, we're back at women's flyweights for Marina Moroz and Jennifer Maia. An interesting fight in a few ways. I think it's a very iffy fight, but yeah, it's interesting because we've got Marina Moroz coming in here on a sizable step up in competition, but she's a sizable favorite at minus 175. Moroz is the favorite here on the money line. Jennifer Maia is the plus 150 underdog. And Jennifer Maia, short of Chookagian, she's kind of one of these staples in the division as far as being like the gatekeeper role. She was a former title challenger. she was a plus 1,000 underdog or something crazy against Shevchenko and lost, but hung in there all 5 rounds, and that's one of Jennifer Maia's better qualities. She's not only is she a BJJ black belt, a pretty good boxer as well, but she's durable and she's got decent cardio. So that's enough to stay at the top of flyweight, that's for sure. And the last time that she lost to anybody that wasn't named Chookagian, Manon Fiorot most recently, and Shevchenko was pre-2019. So she's doing pretty well. Not the best record at 19 wins, 9 losses, I believe 1 no contest. I'm not really sure what she's amazing at, right? She's got some pretty good defense as far as the striking goes. Like I mentioned, her boxing skill is pretty good. Respect earning power, I would say, and good combinations and counters, but Marina Moroz is somebody who's just come off of a dominant grappling performance over Maria Agapova, whose ceiling is questionable, right? We kind of expected that would happen if she took the fight to the mat. Moroz is able to grind out Agapova in round 2 by an arm triangle choke, and that's kind of what she needs to do. She needs to either control the clinch or control the fight on the ground. So this is an iffy fight, in my opinion, with injuries having kept Marina Moroz sort of inactive as well. It's hard to see where she's at skill-wise. This will be a good test for her because she's able to control girls like Sabina Mazo, Mayra Bueno Silva, not do incredible on the striking numbers, but control them and mix up the targets on the striking to win the fight. So got to give the grappling offense to Marina Moroz, give her the striking output and aggression. She mixes up the targets well with leg kicks, strikes to the body, strikes up top. I think it might be enough to beat Jennifer Maia here, but the money line sketches me out. I think this should be a lot closer. There might be a little bit of, technically some quote-unquote value on Jennifer Maia, but I do see Moroz winning this fight a decent amount of the time. I just don't know if it's as many times as minus 175 would indicate, so not going to be a bet for me on this fight. I think it probably does see the scorecard, so pick your favorite fighter, pick them by decision might be a good spot here. But yeah, this is a big step up in competition for Moroz. I think she has the tools to get it done. She also yells every time she strikes. That certainly helps rack up imaginary points on the scoreboards and get the judges to write your name as the winner. So give me Marina Moroz to edge out a decision here. It could be a split decision. It could be something very iffy and close. So I'm going to stay away from this betting-wise, but give me Moroz to win a decision here. Up next at flyweight, we've got Zhumagulov taking on Charles Energy Johnson, and this is a spot where I almost feel like Charles Johnson is making his actual debut now against Zhumagulov. This is a guy in Charles Johnson who had to face, over the summer, he had to face, in his debut, Mohamed Makayev at flyweight. So even though Charles Johnson has some pretty massive size at the weight class, he's 5'9", a 70-inch reach, not that old, he's only 31 years old, it's still a spot where his well-rounded game is not enough against an elite grappler like Mohamed Makayev, an elite Dagestani talent. He was taken down 12 times, held down, I think, like 12 minutes out of a 15-minute fight, maybe more. So just nothing he could do, but he should be primed now, Charles Johnson, to, have worked on his wrestling before and after that defensively, and maybe even offensively. The guy's pretty well-rounded. Charles Johnson has submissions on his record. He's able to defend against takedowns coming his way in the LFA. And he made a lot of improvements at kind of an old age in his late 20s. Looked like night and day between his 2 LFA stints. And he's a guy who was able to beat Carlos Mota, who's a fellow striking savage over there at the LFA who just made his UFC debut. So Charles Johnson's got power, he's got pace, he's got the physical advantages here. Zhumagulov has got the UFC experience, just the overall higher level experience in MMA, but always keeps it close, managing to just barely squeak by some of these decisions. 4 split decisions, 1 majority decision where a judge called the fight with Tagir Ulanbekov in Fight Nights Global a tie, making it a majority decision win for Zhalgas. He's 14-7. 6-5 in decisions, 7 knockouts on Zhalgas' record, but most of those are super early in his career. Only 1 as of late. So, yeah, coming off of a slight split decision loss over Jeff Molina, a fight where he could have easily won that fight. It was close. Not the best wrestler, not the best striker, but he can mix everything together at the right times just to edge out a round. So that is an issue here against Charles Johnson. But Charles Johnson, a minus 155 favorite. Zhalgas, a plus 135 underdog. So I'm trying to analyze this line. I feel like this is maybe a buy low spot on Charles Johnson, who has the better, more effective tools and a bigger frame here. And a little bit younger, maybe a little bit more improving still. And he's at minus 155. If he had not fought Muhammad Mikhaev, I'm trying to imagine where this line would have been if he was just now making his debut, which is how I'm going to pretend this is going down. So no bet yet for me. I do like Charles Johnson here to, just nullify any attempts at takedowns from Zhalgas, keep this at range with his long reach, and just outstrike Zhalgas to either a finish or a decision win pretty comfortably. Now Zhalgas will have to really be on point, aggressive early, gain respect early. Zhalgas will have to put Charles on his back foot and be Charles's shadow, be the bigger man's shadow and out counter him at every turn here, basically, and maybe do a good job of the clinch or dirty boxing against the fence. I think Zhalgas will have to be on point, make it decisive. He's not one to do that, so give me Charles Johnson. At the price tag, I might take a stab on his money line. Don't be surprised if you see me bet Charles Johnson later in the week. Charles Johnson by decision is the pick. Okay, up next at welterweight, we've got Jack Della Maddalena, super prospect at welterweight, taking on Danny Roberts, who's a 12-fight UFC veteran. Biggest betting favorite on the card, Jack Della Maddalena, minus 425 as it stands right now, plus 325 the underdog on Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts. Both guys generally southpaws. Danny Robert exclusively a southpaw. Maddalena can switch stances and be effective, but mostly a southpaw. And 12-2 record for the Australian Jack Della Maddalena. He's a big favorite because he's a very talented striker, very talented prospect. 12-2 record on a 12-fight winning streak, with 11 finishes out of those 12 wins. His last 2 in the UFC, both this year over Pete Rodriguez, round 1 knockout. Another round 1 knockout over Ramazan Ameev in June at UFC 275, I believe. And he had a little bit of early adversity he had to overcome, get out of that anaconda choke that was pretty deep. He stayed very patient, very calm, got out of the move, and ended up boxing up Ameev with some body strikes that ended the fight in round 1. So solid takedown defense. Solid speed, creativity, mixes up the targets well, huge power, and a big frame for the weight class. Now, Danny Roberts does outsize him slightly, right? 6'1" and a 74-inch reach for the 35-year-old Danny Roberts compared to the 26-year-old Jack Della Maddalena. And out of his 12 fights, Danny Roberts has gone 7-5 since 2015. He is an Englishman, and he fought in a lot of those pre-pandemic UFC abroad cards where he was facing a lot of competition that's no longer in the UFC currently. So I think that's how he's been able to stay positive. He is a generalist where he can threaten takedowns and wrestling with non-grapplers and pretty low non-UFC caliber guys, but he'll get out-wrestled by the better ones and outstruck by everybody with his poor striking defense and does not eat damage particularly well. He's lost 5 UFC bouts, and Danny Roberts has been finished in 4 of those, and almost his last bout where he lost the decision to Francisco Trinaldo. Old man Trinaldo out-volumed him and almost got him out of there with a body strike. He hit Danny Roberts, I think, with a right hand to the body, and Roberts folded over, probably could have gotten finished by strikes, but I think Trinaldo jumped on his neck for a guillotine, if memory serves me right. So ended up being a decision loss there, but that's not a good loss. The much smaller, older Trinaldo, you're losing a bout to him in 2022, not very good. So I'm going to go under 1.5 round knockout for Jack Della Maddalena, probably in round 1. Minus 425 on the money line, probably safe for parlays, but even Jack Della inside the distance, I think, is like minus 200 or more. You could target the unders as a parlay piece as well, just in case something crazy happens to Jack in this fight. But I think Jack Della Maddalena, a pretty safe, non-controversial pick here, round 1 knockout. Up next at welterweight, we've got a fun striker versus striker matchup between Andre Fialho and Muslim Salikhov. 38 years old is Muslim Salikhov, the king of Kung Fu at this point. Getting up there in age, this will be, I believe, his 8th fight in the UFC. 5'11" with a 69.5-inch reach. He'll be 10 years older and have 5 inches less of reach than Fialho at 6 foot tall and 28 years old. Fialho is a Very dangerous guy who brings some serious power at 170, and he's fought on every stage right now that's popular, right? LFA, PFL, Bellator, UAE Warriors, and now this will be his 5th fight in the UFC, all in 2022. So very active guy. The complete opposite of Muslim Salikhov at this age. Muslim Salikhov has fought, his last 4 fights have all been 1 year apart, in 2019, 2021, and 22, all of his last 4 fights. So slowing down on the schedule for Salikhov, speeding up for the young man Fialho. This is a close fight. I mean, on the money line, it's a pick-em price tag, -110 to -110. Fialho is usually a very dangerous round 1 finisher. In the past, Muslim Salikhov has been as well, but recently Salikhov is more 1 strike at a time, low volume, uses his unorthodox spinning techniques and accurate kicks to kind of keep people at bay, and every now and then he'll catch a kick, secure a takedown, some control time, and then mix it right back up with striking on the feet. So he's been blessed with getting some low-volume guys in return, but most recently over the summer, he fought Li Jingliang, who is no joke, and actually I called Li Jingliang would be the first one to knock out Muslim Salikhov, and that's exactly what happened in round 2. Once Salikhov started to slow and get more easily timed, Li Jingliang, had a nice pull counter right cross, timed off Salikhov's jab, and started this whole sequence for like a minute long of Salikhov just getting beat up on the feet and eventually knocked out. So a lot of fight miles on Muslim Salikhov at this point. He is the Chinese kickboxing, master. That's where he gets his name, the king of kung fu. Excuse me. He has over 200 kickboxing matches, Olympic level fights, and of course, now he's got 21 21 professional mixed martial arts fights under his belt as well. So 38 years old on paper, like 80 years old in fight years. Andre Fialho has had quite a few fights as well and some damage taken as well. He's been knocked out 3 times, but Fialho seems to be getting better, and he impressed me this year, especially in his debut on short notice against Michel Pereira. He showed a huge ability to be aggressive, counter in combinations, move forward in combinations, and fight through fatigue in a 3-round fight when he was usually a 1-rounder bust guy. So I still think he prefers to fight at that pace. He draws people into wars, does Andre Fialho, but he's got the volume and the cardio to back it up as well. So I think this will largely be on the feet. Like I mentioned, Salikhov does employ takedowns and clinch work, but usually these days he's catching kicks and dumping people on the ground that way. I think Fialho will be able to get back up to his feet. And a guy who's largely a boxing type of striker, I don't think he's going to be at risk of getting taken down here. I like Andre Fialho. I put 2 units on him at +105. This did open up as Fialho as an underdog. I saw a 10-year younger man who's got very devastating power at 170 and seems to be more active and just have way more in the tank. So I said at plus money, sign me up for that, a couple of units, and now the money line is going probably closer. I wouldn't be surprised if Fialho ends as the favorite come fight night. Still a dangerous fight. I know you're seeing a guy in Fialho who just got knocked out cold from Jake Matthews, and you're seeing a Muslim Salikhov striking world-class fighter. I think that's, a kind of a recency bias on Fialho. I still think he's got much more in the tank with all of his youth and experience to back it up. So give me Andre Fialho to draw Salikhov into a war in round 1, wear out his cardio, and in early round 2, I think Fialho lands the devastating, hook that he needs up close to end Salikhov's career. So I think this is one of his last fights, if not the last fight on Muslim Salikhov's UFC contract. So it might actually end his career here. So give me Andre Fialho, round 2, devastating knockout. Okay, up next is a fun heavyweight fight, or at least I think it's fun, between Waldo Cortes-Acosta and Chase Sherman, 2 pretty low-level heavyweights, and both guys I've talked about recently, so I'm going to keep this brief. Waldo Cortes-Acosta I spoke about 2.5 weeks ago when he made his debut against Jared Vanderaa, a successful victory in his debut, but it was a pretty lackluster, boring 3-round decision he won. Jared Vanderaa was backpedaling the whole time, avoiding the knockout blow from Acosta, and just throwing leg kicks. And Vanderaa, to his credit, landed 39 leg kicks on Acosta, according to the UFC stats. So it is surprising Acosta is up and walking and ready to fight again on short notice here. But Acosta landed the better of the head and body strikes and was advancing the whole time. Being the aggressor, he won the fight by decision. Chase Sherman was supposed to fight Josh Parisian a couple weeks back. Parisian, I think, had some heart problems or some sort of health issue on fight day, so he pulled out, leaving Chase Sherman still itching for a fight. Both guys about the same age, 1 year apart, 32 for Chase Sherman. They're both 6'4" with a 78-inch reach. Big boys, only 7 pounds differed in their weigh-in results for the last fight. 260.5 pounds in the favor of Acosta. Yeah, I mean, so you're going to have Acosta, who's the slow-plotting heavyweight here. Probably the more technical boxing goes to Chase Sherman, even though Acosta was a former boxer as well. His only 2 losses in combat sports were knockout ones in boxing. Otherwise, Acosta is now 8-0, an undefeated heavyweight here, going 4 knockouts, 1 submission, 3-0 in decision. Chase Sherman has had 16 wins, 10 losses. Most of those losses were in the UFC, I think all except for 1. And he's gotten 15 knockouts out of his 16 wins. So that's pretty much his win condition. Chase Sherman is plus 150 on the money line, minus 175 the favorite for Acosta. Obviously, low-level heavyweight, I think that could be a tighter money line, since I give the experience to Sherman, the early speed, tighter boxing, and he didn't just eat leg kicks 3 weeks ago, so I give him a lot of those advantages. I give the size, the cardio, and the durability to Waldo Cortes-Acosta here, and probably the ability in the clinch as well. Why not give that to Acosta? So it's a close fight. So I can see how they favor Acosta here, but one thing I like is the props dropped. The first thing I like is the fight doesn't go to decision at minus 200. I think that's extremely playable. And the Sherman inside the distance at plus 290, I put a half a unit on that because I think that's his money line. Only 5 of Sherman's 26 fights have actually seen the scorecards, and he's gone 1-4 in those decision results. So even the rare chance that he goes to decision here in a sloppy heavyweight fight, there's even more rare that he wins the decision. So I think that him finishing this inside the distance, mostly by knockout, would be his money line. So plus 290 inside the distance, I had to put a half of a unit on that because I think this fight is a coin flip fight in general. So give me Chase Sherman to actually be the aggressor, unlike Jared Vanderaa, and aggress Waldo Cortes-Acosta, meet him in the center of the octagon and slug it out. And I think Chase Sherman can land the bigger fight-ending sequence earlier than later in round 1. So give me Chase Sherman here. Obviously, I'm not that confident in a side in this fight. It'll be hard to be. But with the money line being plus 150, probably playable, but even more playable is that inside the distance or knockout prop, which I got at plus 290 for Chase Sherman. Round 1 knockout is the prediction here. Okay, looks like this is the co-main event of this fight card, surprisingly, but I do like the matchup at light heavyweight, Ian Cutelaba versus Kennedy Nzechukwu. We've got the insane pace and power of Ian Cutelaba, and we've got the slow, patient, but large frame of Kennedy Nzechukwu. Kennedy is 30 years old, 6'5" with an 83-inch reach. Very big man for the weight class. He is the minus 175 favorite. Ian Cutelaba, even younger, 28 years old, surprisingly. He is 6'1", 75-inch reach for the Moldovan, who finds himself now, after 2 consecutive losses, as the plus 150 underdog here. So we're looking at Ian Cutelaba, Greco-Roman wrestler, Sambo base, match that with some fight-ending power in his hands and aggression early. Guy's pretty intense. He's 16 wins, 8 losses, 1 draw, 1 no contest, with 12 knockouts to make up those 16 wins. And most of them were round 1 knockouts. He's a very fast starter. He's only been KO'd a couple of times. One time officially. The other time is a TKO stoppage, but it was a kind of like an early referee stoppage, sort of an accident that they had to run back. Both of them at the hands of Magomed Ankalaev, who's very, very good. But he's also been subbed, as Cutelaba, by 4 guys in the UFC. Misha Serkinov, Glover Teixeira, Ryan Spann, and Johnny Walker most recently. So his record is starting to be pretty terrible in the UFC, but he's been taking on some top guys at the weight class, and his aggression leaves a lot of holes in his defense, right? It also leaves the ability for him to gas out later in the fight. That's probably the biggest con, on his pro-con list. But the pros on that one are his takedown ability is top-notch, his strength is pretty much unmatched at the weight class, and his knockout power and fast pace early is hard to deal with, especially for a guy like Kennedy Nzechukwu, who's such a tall striker, kind of slow to answer strikes, very patient, slow-plotting style. And Kennedy Nzechukwu, his durability is still yet to be kind of determined where it's at, right? He showed good durability against guys like Nikolai Negumereanu recently, against Carlos Ulberg, who he Homer Simpsoned to an eventual stoppage in round 2 himself. So sometimes he can absorb strikes, but then sometimes he'll have like a Da Un Jung performance where a minute in, he eats a soft elbow and it knocks him out cold. So it's kind of, we have to see where he's at durability-wise. I think Ian Cutelaba is going to test that in round 1. Again, depending on the version of Kennedy that shows up, if Kennedy shows up the kind that's like very slow to open up, kind of plods forward without answering strikes or gaining respect to maintain distance, he's going to get eaten alive here, and I think that is a very good chance that happens. We're getting kind of an improved money line of Kennedy and Nzechukwu because he showed good wrestling offense for the first time against Carl Robertson, eventually taking down Robertson, flattening him out in round 3, and ending him with ground and pound elbows. For a TKO stoppage, of course, you got to give the size, the cardio to Kennedy and Nzechukwu down the stretch, but I got to give the explosiveness and the fast starting, the ability to end the fight early, and the wrestling all to Cutelaba. I think this is a step down for Cutelaba. I think he's going to be able to get the round 1 knockout here, blitzing Kennedy early. He's not a guy you really want to trust with your money, so I really do want a good plus number attached to him. I'll see where the money line goes. Right now, he's like plus 145, plus 150, but I really do think he's going to test the chin of Nzechukwu early, drag him to the mat with the wrestling. Now, Cutelaba is, like I mentioned, he's at risk of getting gassing himself out early here, muscling around the 6'5" frame of Kennedy, but I'm going to trust Cutelaba to get this done. As an underdog here, I think he gets the round 1 finish or does enough in rounds 1 and rounds 2. Maybe he can cruise in that round 3, gas out a little bit, be low volume, and still win 2-1 by decision. So give me Cutelaba to win here. I'm going to see where the money line goes if I place a bet on this fight. Okay, we've made it to the main event of the fight night. We've got Derek Lewis taking on Sergey Spivak at heavyweight. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Let's break into this one where we have the Black Beast, Derek Lewis, as a plus 170 underdog versus Sergey Spivak, who's 10 years younger. The polar bear is minus 200 on the money line, and money's coming in on Sergey Spivak. Probably seen as the more well-rounded guy. I mean, it's hard not to be more well-rounded than Derek Lewis, in all honesty. You have any modicum of grappling or wrestling and some size to match, and you're more well-rounded than Derek Lewis. That's no surprise. Sergey Spivak is only 27 years old to Derek Lewis is 37. Sergey Spivak has had, I think, 9 UFC fights at this point. He's been in the league since making his debut, a knockout loss to Walt Harris, one of his 3 losses early on in 2019. Since then, slowly working his way back up lower end competition. Carlos Felipe, Jared Vandera, Alexei Oleinik by decision. He got knocked out by Tom Aspinall, out decisioned by Marcin Tybura, but now coming off of a knockout of Greg Hardy in round 1 and also a round 2 ground and pound of Augusto Sakai just in August in round 2. So yeah, Sergey Spivak is, I believe, like a Ukrainian-born Moldovan grappler, and he's got okay striking if he can, get some early comfort without a lot of people pressuring him quickly his way. If he can push just a simple jab, maybe like a right cross, left hook, right cross combo, he can kind of stick and move that way, and then just look for the level change. He looks for the single leg takedown, pushes a bigger heavyweight against the cage, and then tries to do like a hip toss or tip them off balance to get them to the mat. Usually not that hard to do, but he uses a lot of strength and muscle to do it, which will be tough against Derek Lewis, who's cutting down to the 265-pound limit. He walks around 280 or so. Sergey Spivak is about 250 the last time he weighed in. And Derek Lewis has actually got a positive record in 5-round bouts. He's been in 9 5-round scheduled fights. None of them have seen round 5. A couple have seen round 4. But he's 5-4 in headlining spots. Like I said, very rarely does he need all 5 rounds. Usually gets the win within a couple or loses within a couple. So Derek Lewis lately has been losing to a couple of types of guys, like a very fast elite striker like a Junior Dos Santos a few years back, or a Cyril Gane a couple years ago. Or he's losing to guys that can match his physical stats and his power, like Tai Tuivasa, pretty much a younger version of him in some aspects, more gas in the tank and equal power. He knocked him out in February. He then got knocked out, not knocked out cold, but he got finished by round 1 strikes by Sergey Pavlovich, a very tall guy who could outreach him and also match his power early. So that's not Sergey Spivak. Sergey Spivak is, not a great striker, not a powerful striker. He likes to get the job done on the ground, so he has to get it there first. Now, even guys that are elite wrestlers like Curtis Blades got knocked out by Derek Lewis within 2 rounds, right? So Lewis does have More athleticism than I think people give him credit for. And I'm not a big Derek Lewis fan. This kind of sounds like I'm a fanboy of the guy. It's frustrating to bet Derek Lewis. It's frustrating to watch him fight. And it's frustrating to bet against him, too. So at plus 170 underdog cost here, I got to pay attention, It might be a good bet, in all honesty, to bet on him or to stay off of Sergey Spivak, because I see some things from Spivak I don't like. I don't like his reactions to taking damage. He can really shell up and not be the most confident there. Like his debut against Walt Harris, he pretty much got blitzed early within like 50 seconds. Some shots were just landing through the guard and knocked out Spivak immediately. I know he was younger then, but still, that same thing kind of happened to him against Tom Aspinall, who's a fast starter, right? And Sergey Spivak tends to, if he can't get the single leg or the double leg, he will clinch up on his opponent's left side and leave the right hand wide open for punches. That's how Aspinall was able to beat him. I saw that happen with him against Tybura a couple times. Tybura was able to get some shots off on him. And Derek Lewis with a massive right uppercut, a massive right hook, just a death touch. If he has one hand free, and Sergey Spivak does tend to do that, if he's avoiding strikes, he'll dip his head down and to the right and try to get out of range. Derek Lewis has some nasty knees. He has some nasty uppercuts, and he's at least game planned for wrestlers in the past. Now, a slick guy who's efficient, like Daniel Cormier, was able to ankle pick him, use trips and things like that, not use a lot of wasted energy muscling a guy like Lewis around. Sergey Spivak, in his last fight against Sakai, was muscling Sakai around. Same with his loss against Marcin Tybura. Tried to muscle Tybura around, ended up on bottom at certain points and lost the fight that way. So I don't know. Obviously, the striking, the power, the experience, the 5-round experience, I guess you could say, goes to Derek Lewis. Give the wrestling, minute-winning youth and cardio probably to Sergey Spivak. But if Spivak has to try to muscle Derek Lewis around in round 1 and round 2, his cardio might not look that great going into the later parts of a fight. So, yeah, I mean, I'm going to take Derek Lewis as an underdog here. I think that there's a couple spots early he can exploit defensively from Spivak, and I think he can just find a break in the clinch to land that death touch. And I'm not a big Derek Lewis fan. I think the guy, everybody becomes a coward when they're fatigued, and Lewis becomes the biggest coward of them all, almost a quitter, you could say. But he's not facing an elite striker here. He's not facing a very fluid mover. And a guy in Spivak who I see has to use a lot of physicality to try to get Lewis to the ground. And we've seen Lewis just say no to the jiu-jitsu and wrestling before. So give me Derek Lewis to get the upset once again at 37 years old, get a round 2 knockout. Okay, there you have it, you guys. All fights broken down for UFC Vegas 65. Derek Lewis versus Sergey Spivak in the main event at heavyweight. A very exciting main event, as all Derek Lewis main events are. And some good betting spots in this card as well. Don't get me wrong, some clear stay-away sketchy fights for me, but I'll be going over all of the bets later on in the week. Also, check out my live stream on Wednesday night. I'll be having my friend, the great Johnny K. Picks, on with me to break down this card, UFC Vegas 65, but also we'll be breaking down the main card of Bellator 288, Vadim Nemkov versus Corey Anderson 2. We're going to be attending that one live together in Chicago on Friday night, so we figured why not do a stream this week together and break down the Bellator as well. So UFC Bellator double feature live stream on Wednesday night at 8:30 Central Time. Check that out. It should be fun. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Check out BetUS. My promo code is in the description below. And also a big rest in peace to Anthony Rumble Johnson, who passed away recently at a very young age. I'm a big fan of Anthony Rumble Johnson, of course. I did get a chance to see him twice in person, I think, only twice. I remember the first was at UFC 106, I think, against Josh Koscheck. He was at 170 pounds for that bout. I saw him years later at UFC 187, challenging Daniel Cormier for the light heavyweight championship. So the guy clearly had power that translated it from welterweight all the way up to heavyweight at a certain point. Just an unbelievable talent and truly somebody who will be missed in our community. So rest in peace to Anthony Rumble Johnson. And I will talk to you guys very soon. Cheers.